Howdy, friends. Steve DePoe here for the Rose Realty team with this week's real estate vlog for North Texas. It's October 2nd, so we're firmly engrossed in fall around North Texas. You can see the leaves changing, got a little bit cooler. We had some wet weather, and so, yep, it's fall in Texas. So what's been happening in spring and summer this year, aside from COVID and lockdowns and pandemics, what's been happening in the real estate market? Well, a lot of people have been refinancing. Interest rates, conventional interest rate mortgages, for a lot of people are in the twos. And so a lot of people are refinancing those high rate mortgages that they've had over the last 5 or 10 years. Moving out of cities. A lot of people are moving out of the city into the suburban areas. They want to control their environment a little bit more. They want to control who their neighbors are. They're concerned about living next door to some family, with COVID. And then, of course, the unrest in the cities, didn't really help, right? Upsizing. So people who didn't have to worry about job security are now deciding to upsize. They realize that 3 kids, 5 people running around the house, and you're trying to work and they're trying to do homeschooling and that kind of stuff, didn't quite work out real well, and so they're looking for a larger house. A lot of them with studies or libraries on them, or actually even a spare bedroom is what they're looking for too, in order to be able to kind of partition or segregate themselves off from the rest of the family. So either the family can study and attend school in the study, or the breadwinner can go off into the study and be alone with his or her business, and so they're looking to upsize. Some people are also looking for investment properties, and that's today's topic for today's vlog: the 9.5 ways to pick the best location for your first investment property. So what we're going to notice here on a lot of these topics here, these 9.5 topics, a lot of them are the same kinds of ideas that we would think about for our own house, right? And so there's not a big difference. There's 2 or 3 curveballs, but there's not a real big difference between if we're looking for an investment property, if we're looking to buy a house for an investment property or for our own living accommodations. So because there's going to be a lot of similarities, and we'll get down to them. So first of all, schools. If you're talking about more than 2 bedrooms, if we're talking about 3 bedrooms and more, that typically means that there's going to be children involved, and the parents of those children are going to want to make sure they're in good schools. Okay. Now, distance learning and video learning aside, okay, at some point, later on this year or the next semester, we'll get back to in-school schooling, if that makes any sense, right? And so parents are going to make sure the schools by where they live are good schools, so that the kids get a good education. So schools are going to be important. Unemployment and growth and job growth. So we're going to want to look for low unemployment and job growth areas. Okay. So just in case, hey, we're living there and something happens to our job, or maybe one of the parents now have to go back to work because the kids are now in a school, and not learning from home, then they're going to say, okay, where can I work? Where can I get a job? And so areas with low unemployment and good job growth is a good prime area for an investment property. Population growth. We don't want to live in an area, don't want to pick an area where people are moving out, okay? Because people are moving out for a reason, okay? And if people are moving out for a reason, then we don't want to buck the system sort of and say, well, they don't know what they're talking about, so we want to move into that area. If people are moving out, if people are leaving that particular town, or maybe it's a development complex with inside of town, etc., we don't want to. We've got to think that they know what they're doing because they've lived there longer than we have, and so we want an area where there's population growth and not population decline and people are moving out. Type of neighborhood. So here we're not talking about ethnicity in terms of type of neighborhood. We're talking about whether it's family or young professionals or college kids, those types of things, right? So college kids are a special breed, you may want to call it, in that if you have a place where kids are going to rent, where students are going to rent, you could get them for 4 years. You could know that they're going to come back 4 years. You've also got to, what you also have to understand is whether they'll rent for 12 months out of the year, or they're going to only rent for, let's say, 7 or 8 months during the school year, and then they're going to go back home and then come back. So that's something that you have to consider, whether you'll have a vacant house for those, 3 or 4 months, where maybe you could do some fix up, or you're going to have to rent to somebody else in order to maintain your return on investment. Again, if it's a professionally occupied, that's sort of like a different animal, a different kind of demographic, right? And that's something else to consider, that they'll probably be sort of longer term renters, and maybe more stable than, let's say, again, college kids. Insurance costs. Well, let's kind of go back to the previous slide for just a second. If you're renting to college kids, typically what that means is your insurance costs are going to be a little bit higher. Also, what you have to consider, are you going to be in a flood zone? Those types of things. What other types of insurance are you going to have to buy? Probably going to have to buy liability insurance should somebody trip and fall in your home, or those types of things, right? We know some great insurance carriers like Liberty Mutual with Josephine Hernandez, for example. They can give you great quotes on insurance costs for your home. Remember, the higher your insurance costs and the more insurance that you need to carry, that means that the more your expenses are and the lower your profitability of your particular place. Number 6, walkability. Okay, how close is this particular house, condo, townhouse, whatever, to things that people are going to need? So, is it close to stores where people can walk to the stores? Is it close to restaurants? Is it close to the local coffee shop, etc.? Is it close to places to work? There's several places in Plano in the Legacy area where there's townhome complexes, literally within a couple hundred yards of places to work. Okay, if you're working in one of these places, and maybe one of these townhomes are for you. There's a couple where literally you could probably do without your car for 6 to 8 months out of the year. Okay, there's a couple of times, couple of months in the summer, where it's blazing hot, or the winter where it's kind of windy and cold and rainy, where you'd want to drive, but for the rest of the year, you can literally like park your car and walk. And so these things, are these going to be attractive to renters or not? Okay, so it's something to consider. Close to public transportation, schools, libraries, those types of things. That's something to consider, whether it makes sense to buy into one of these areas. Nearby amenities, again, bike trails, walking trails, exercise locations. Are they close by? Are they within walking distance? Or you're gonna have to get in your car and drive 5 miles to get to Lifetime Fitness. Okay, these are all things to consider in terms of location. Remember, location, location, location. Number 8, public transportation. Again, so is it within walking distance of the local the closest bus station or train station, or are you right next to Dallas North Tollway, where you can literally like roll out of bed, hop in your car, bam, you're on the tollway, and you're down to in downtown Dallas, or Fort Worth, or what have you. So how close are you to public transportation is going to be a big selling point to renters to come in and rent your place. Also, later on down the line, one of the sayings is you when you buy rental property, you think about what it's going to take to sell it. Okay, again, if you're buying a rental property or investment property for renters, and it's close to public transportation, that's going to be a big selling point 5, 10, 15 years down the line, because it's still going to be it's still likely to be close to the train or the highway. Number 9, crime rates. Crime rates are important. They're important for me and you in terms of whether you want to live in a high crime area or not. Okay, same thing for investment property in terms of your renters, right? You want them to be safe. You want them to feel secure inside of the home, and so we want areas with low crime rates. So we want to make sure that the crime statistics for that particular area are low. Places like CoreLogic can give us information about crime rates in specific areas, and we want to be aware of those. It might also raise our insurance rates if we're in a higher crime area. And number 9.5, the distance from you. This is important because it depends on whether you're going to be the landlord and the super, or whether you're going to farm out the maintenance. Now, there's pluses and minuses to both, right? If you're going to do it yourself, it's going to be less expensive and cheaper, okay? But at the same time, you're going to be getting calls at, 10:30 at night in July or August that the air conditioning went out, and that's going to be your responsibility to call the air conditioning company. If you had a maintenance company, it's going to be their responsibility to call the air conditioning company. On the other hand, what's going to happen is your carrying costs, you may want to call it, are going to be higher, which means that this maintenance company is going to take somewhere between 25 and 35% of revenues, and then you're going to be your expenses are going to be high, and your return on investment is going to be lower. So these are things to consider. We've actually done it both ways, where I'm the super, and in another case, because the property is a little bit further away, we have one where we have to farm that out. Pluses and minuses to both, and it all depends on what your sort of bottom line expense tolerances are, and what kind of money you're making on the rental compared to your expenses and your costs. These are all things to take into consideration. So if you're looking for a rental property, or you're looking for an investment property, we can help you out. We've got access to a lot of really good ones right now, and we can help you find one that's going to suit your specific purposes. I hope you enjoyed this. It was a kind of interesting putting it together. Next week, we're going to talk about the projects that you can do right now, kind of low cost projects you can do right now to add value to your home immediately. This is Steve DePoe for the Rose Realty team. I'm going to bounce.